This is Eye on Africa, France24's program focused on the continent. I'm Charlie James, in for Georgia Calvin-Smith, and here's what's ahead. The Nobel Prize in Literature awarded to a Tanzanian writer who moved to Britain as a refugee. Abdulrazak Gurnah honored for his uncompromising and compassionate penetration of the effects of colonialism. Ethiopia accuses the UN officials of inflating the humanitarian crisis in the Tigray region. The UN Secretary General hits back and demands to see proof for the accusations. And this year's Africa-France Summit will not be focused on politicians, but on young African and French talents. Our reporter in Montpellier explains why. Thanks much for joining us this evening. The most prestigious award in world literature has been handed to Tanzanian writer Abdulrazak Gurnah. The Nobel Prize Committee said Gurnah was honored for being one of the world's most prominent post-colonial writers and a voice of the displaced. He was born in Zanzibar, now part of Tanzania, but fled to Britain at age 18 as a refugee. Gurnah reacted to the award, saying, "This is the last thing he would have imagined for himself."
It's incredible. And yes, it was a complete surprise. Yes. You know, these days you get a lot of these cold calls. And you pick up the phone and you don't know who's calling. And somebody says to you, "You've won the Nobel Prize," and you think, "Oh yeah."
Regional correspondent Caroline Kimu tells us more about the Nobel Committee's decision and the work of Abdulrazak Gurnah.
Abdulrazak Gurnah has made history as the first Tanzanian author to take home the coveted Nobel Prize for Literature. The author, who has written 10 novels and various short stories, received high praise from the committee for his works which touch on the effects of colonialism and the fate of refugees often caught between cultures and continents. He also received praise for his work, which provide a non-stereotypical and authentic account of life in East Africa, unknown to many in the rest of the world. The chairman of the committee went further to describe Gurnah as one of the most prominent post-colonial writers in the world. Gurnah's work mirror his life in great part. He was born in Zanzibar and at 18 had to leave his country because of a revolution in 1964. Since then, he lived and worked in England, and until recently, when he retired, he worked as a professor of English and post-colonial literature at the University of Kent in Canterbury. According to Gurnah's editor, the author has not received the amount of recognition he's deserved until this point. With no doubt, following the prize, he will be at the end of a lot of international attention.
The United Nations chief demanding proof from Ethiopia over its government's claim that UN officials exaggerated the humanitarian crisis in Tigray. In a rare move, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres lashed out over the accusations, which came as Ethiopia expelled 7 UN officials. Laurent Berstecker with the story.
Is this an expression of the level of your...
Standing his ground against Addis Abeba,
It's my duty to defend the honor of the United Nations.
UN Chief Antonio Guterres slammed Ethiopian authorities' decision to expel 7 United Nations staff members, calling it a violation of international law, and asked to see proof of their wrongdoing.
This unprecedented expulsion should be a matter of deep concern for us all, as it relates to the core of relations between the UN and member states. If there is any written document provided by the Ethiopian government, I would like to receive a copy of that document.
Ethiopia's decision last week to expel the staff for meddling in the country's internal affairs sparked an emergency Security Council meeting on Wednesday. There, Ethiopia's UN ambassador took to the floor to justify the evictions.
The UN staff, Ethiopia expelled, sidelined their oaths, the rules of professional conduct, and the principles of humanitarian assistance. We find it incomprehensible for this august body to discuss the decision of a sovereign state.
There were worries the expulsions could further impede humanitarian operations in Ethiopia's Tigray region, where a bloody conflict has left some 5 million people in dire need of aid. The UN also warned the move could set a dangerous precedent by encouraging other countries to follow suit.
The African Union to start talks with the World Health Organization about getting the malaria vaccine to the continent as soon as possible. While the shot is being hailed as a game changer, questions remain about how production and distribution will work. Selena Sykes looks at the vaccine pilot programs and potential logistical issues.
Over the last 3 years in Western Kenya, the groundbreaking malaria vaccine has made a huge difference in the fight against the deadly disease.
Long before you could get the entire pet occupancy, at least more than 70% with malaria. But as opposed to now, you are getting like 3 out of 16. That is a very minimal percentage.
Kenya is one of 3 countries in sub-Saharan Africa, along with Ghana and Malawi, that started rolling out the vaccine in pilot immunization programs. More than 2 million doses have been administered in the 3 countries. The World Health Organization says the vaccine should be given to children across sub-Saharan Africa and in other regions with high malaria transmission. A massive rollout program which will involve some challenges, notably regarding its production. For the time being, British pharmaceutical giant GlaxoSmithKline is the only producer after its RTSS vaccine was given the green light, though there soon will be other competition. Firstly, from the University of Oxford, whose Matrix M vaccine could be given to children up to the age of 2, if findings so far prove to be conclusive. German lab BioNTech has also said it wants to develop a vaccine based on mRNA technology. How exactly the vaccine rollouts will be financed is another crucial question. The pilot program was supported by Vaccine Alliance Gavi, Global Funds to Fight AIDS, Tuberculosis and Malaria, and UNITAID. The logistics of the rollout itself are also important. The vaccine requires 4 doses to be effective, the first of which needs to be given to children at 5 months old. It will only be given to children in sub-Saharan Africa, which accounts for 90% of malaria cases. More challenges are likely to emerge, such as the possibility of the disease developing resistance against the vaccine and the vaccine itself becoming less effective over time, as well as whether vaccination should take place in other parts of the world, such as South America and Southeast Asia.
Drug maker Moderna is planning to build a factory in Africa, one that will produce up to 500 million doses of mRNA vaccines each year. African nations and the WHO have been pressuring drug makers to set up vaccine plants on the continent to help it secure supplies of COVID shots. Only about 4.5% of Africans have been fully vaccinated against COVID. Moderna says it will begin the process of deciding the location of the plant soon. In Africa, France summit is being held tomorrow in the southern French town of Montpellier. This time around, French President Emmanuel Macron will not host African leaders, but members of the continent's civil society, artists, and young people. France24's Nicolas Germain is in Montpellier and explains the change.
This is the first France-Africa summit since 1973 where there will be no African heads of state. This is because Emmanuel Macron wants to break with the past. He wants to break with the image of what is known here as France-Afrique, which is the name given to the murky relationship between France and some of its former African colonies, France regularly accused of supporting dictators. So he wants to break with that image, and that's why he's invited at this summit hundreds of young activists, business leaders, athletes, artists, what they're calling African civil society. Many debates are going to be organized. The themes are quite broad: democracy, business, sports, culture. And Macron himself will be holding a debate with 11 young Africans on Friday afternoon for 3 hours. Many here in Montpellier are hoping that some controversial issues will be addressed. For example, France's role in the genocide of the Tutsis in Rwanda. Macron has been praised for already recognizing part of France's role in that genocide. He's been much more criticized, for example, in Chad, where he remained silent when recently the son of the late President Idriss Déby took power without organizing elections, because we we know, of course, that France and Chad are strong allies in the Sahel region. So many here are hoping that some of the thornier issues will also be addressed during this summit. And here in Montpellier, not everyone is in favor of this official summit. Some left-wing activists, for example, are organizing a counter summit here in the city of Montpellier.
That was France24's Nicolas Germain reporting. South Africa celebrating the 90th birthday of Archbishop Desmond Tutu Thursday. Though frail, Tutu and his wife marked his birthday with a low-key church service at Cape Town's St. George's Cathedral. A Nobel Peace Prize laureate and veteran of South Africa's struggle against apartheid, he is often hailed as the conscience of his nation.
He really presents that part of our history in a way that very few other people can do. And to be here today on his 90th birthday, I mean, there were times, let's be honest, when we thought the health challenges were such that he would never make it.
I just think that there's no magic. But when you look at someone like Archbishop Tutu, 90 years, still going strong, then we can just say, no, there is some magic in the South Africa still left.
And finally on the program, caretakers at Congo's Virunga National Park are mourning one of their beloved mountain gorillas. Named Ndakasi, she became famous after posing for a selfie with her caretaker in 2019. She was just 2 months old when she was found clinging to the body of her mother, who had been killed by an armed militia. Ndakasi died at 14 years old following a long illness in the arms of the ranger who rescued her as a baby. That's all for this edition of Eye on Africa, but do stay with us here on France 24. More news up next.